This is a lesson for Algebra for 3-10, day 2. What you did yesterday was you had the elimination method. In the elimination method, you had opposites there already. You had like a 4x and a negative 4x, or a 5x and a negative 5x, or a 2y and a negative 2y. So you had those opposites already. Today, what you're doing is you have to create your own opposites first. Then it's exactly like yesterday, all of the same steps. The only difference between yesterday and today is that very first step of creating your own opposites. So what you have to think about when you see a question today is you have to think about what is the opposite of the larger number. By larger number, I mean the number that's farther away from 0 on the number line. So for example, in this first one, -8 would be the larger number because that's farther away from 0 on the number line than 4. So what you have to think about is what do you have to multiply by to get the opposite of the larger number? So if I take a look at this -8 and 4, I want to create opposites with my larger number, the number farther away from 0 on the number line. So what is the opposite of -8? Well, the opposite of -8 is +8. So I need to think about what do I need to multiply this 4 by to get the opposite of -8, which is +8. So 4 times what equals 8? Well, 4 times 2 is 8. Therefore, if I would multiply 2 times 4, I'd get 8. And then I have my opposites. I have my -8 and I have my +8. What you're actually going to see in the questions today, you won't just see a number by itself. You'll have like an X or a Y after it. So here we have 10 and -2. 10 is the larger number. So the opposite of 10 is -10. To get a -10 here, what do I have to multiply by -2 by? Well, I have to multiply that -2 by 5. 5 times -2 is -10. So then I have my opposites of 10 and -10. Again, remember, you're going to have like an X or a Y after those. 2 and 2. Well, the opposite of 2 is -2. So to get a -2 here, I would have to multiply by -1 because then I'd have -2 and +2. You could have done that one differently. All right. In our original question, we had a 2 and a 2. You have your choice where you want to make your opposites. If I wanted to make my -2 down here, you could. There's nothing wrong with it. You have your choice. All right. It'll end up with the same answer. You'll just have a little bit different work. Here, the opposite of 6 and 2. The opposite of 6 is -6. So to get a -6 here, I would have to multiply by -3. We have 2 and 8. To get the opposite of 8, the opposite of 8 is -8. To get a -8 here, I'd have to multiply by -4. -5 and 1. The opposite of -5 is +5. To get a +5 here, I'd have to multiply by 5. 2 and 3. Now, sometimes all these numbers, all these 5, 6, 7 examples that we had before it, all these 7 examples before it, the one number was evenly divisible into the other number. So, sorry, all you had to do was multiply one of the numbers by a number to get the opposite. Well, here, 2 does not go into 3 evenly. So what we have to do sometimes is we have to multiply both of the numbers together. 2 times 3 is 6. To get a +6 here, I'd have to multiply by 3. To get a -6 here, I'd have to multiply by -2. That way we end up with our opposites. So if one number is not evenly divisible into the other, you want to multiply those two numbers together and then create your opposites. So you're going to multiply both things by a number. Now, could you have done this one differently and created a -6 up here? Sure. But then you would have a +6 down here. So you'd have to multiply the bottom by a +2. As long as you end up with opposites, you're all good. All right. It doesn't matter where the positive one is and where the negative one is. It could be the top or the bottom. Here we have 3 and -10. 3 does not go in evenly to 10. So we're going to have to multiply both of these by a number. So 3 times -10 is -30. To get a -30 down here, I'd have to multiply by 3. To get a +30 here, I'd have to multiply by 10. And again, you could have done it the exact opposite way and created a -30 up top and a +30 on the bottom by multiplying by -10 and -3. You do have your choice in a lot of this, all right? It doesn't matter. You'll get the same answers in the end. But what you're trying to do is create your own opposites by multiplying. The one big thing, all right, and these are all the same steps as yesterday, except for step number 1, which is to multiply to create your opposite term. The big thing that you have to remember, the single biggest mistake that people make in this is when you go to multiply. Now, here we're just multiplying one number to create our opposites. When you go to multiply, you're going to multiply that whole entire equation, including the equal sign, by that number. So if we had to, for example, if we had 2x plus 3y equals 5, and we needed to create opposites, maybe we were creating a 4x. Well, you don't only multiply the 2 times 2 to make the 4x. You have to do 2 times the y value and 2 times the equal sign. The single biggest mistake that people make is forgetting to distribute all 3 times. You are always going to distribute all 3 times. There's never a time where you only distribute once. But again, the single biggest mistake that people make is only distributing that one time instead of all 3 times. So this would actually become 4x plus 6y equals 10. So please make sure that you remember to distribute all 3 times. So let's take a look at this question. If we take a look at this first question, we have 5x plus 2y equals 7, and we have x plus 4y equals 5. I know that there is a 1 in front of that x already. I would highly encourage you, anytime you have a letter all by itself, to write the 1 in there. It will help you out, trust me. So we're actually going to, in these first two examples are exactly the same. I'm going to do one with creating opposites with the x's, one with creating opposites with your y's. You do have your choice on what you want to make opposites with. So if I choose, I'm going to choose the x's in this first one. If I choose to make opposites with my x's, I have a 5x and I have a 1x. The opposite of 5x is negative 5x. So to get a negative 5x here, I have to multiply this whole entire equation by negative 5. I need to distribute. Make sure that you distribute all 3 times. So I'm just going to rewrite my original question, 5x plus 2y equals 7. And now I'm going to distribute. So negative 5 times 1x is negative 5x. Negative 5 times 4y is negative 20y. And negative 5 times 5 is negative 25. Make sure that you distribute to all 3 terms. Now it's just like yesterday. Notice that I have my opposites right here. So all I need to do as my next step is just add going down. When you add going down, those will cancel out. 5 plus negative 5 is 0, so those just cancel out. 2y plus negative 20y is negative 18y. 7 plus negative 25 is negative 18. Now I just have a one-step equation. With that one-step equation, all I have to do is solve this one-step equation. So divide by negative 18, divide by negative 18. Negative 18 divided by negative 18 is 1. Make sure that you are using the correct letter all the way through. Our x's canceled out, so we're solving for y first. Now that I know that my y value equals 1, I need to take and sub it back in to either here or here. You have your choice which one you want to sub it into, right? I like to sub it into the one that looks easier. I think this bottom equation looks a little bit easier, so that's the one that I'm going to sub it into. So when I go to sub it in, I'm going to have 1x plus 4y equals 5. I'm going to take this 1 and sub it in for y. So instead of 4 times y, I have 4 times 1. And again, you could have subbed it into the upper equation if you wanted to. I just thought the bottom equation looked a little bit easier. 4 times 1 is just 4, so I have 1x plus 4 equals 5. Minus 4 minus 4. Sorry about this. So solving this equation, 1x equals 1, divide by 1, divide by 1, and you get x equals 1. So my two answers are x equals 1 and y equals 1. Are they always going to end up being the same number? No, they're not. That's just a coincidence. You can check your answer if you want to. All right, we would be checking the 1, 1. All right, you check your answer by subbing it in. So we have 5x plus 2y equals 7. I can take and sub in my answers. 5 times 1 plus 2 times 1 equals 7. 5 times 1 is 5. 2 times 1 is 2. So I'd have 5 plus 2 equals 7. 7 equals 7. It checks. Checking the other equation as well. I have 1x plus 4y equals 5 as my original equation. I'm subbing in my 1 and my 1. So 1 times 1 plus 4 times 1 equals 5. So I have 1 plus 4 equals 5. 5 equals 5. It checks. As long as both of them check and you end up with the same answer on both sides of the equal sign, you know that you did it correct. So in this one, I made opposites with my x's. Well, we're going to actually do the same exact question, but we're going to do opposites with the y's this time. So if I look at my y's, I have a 2y and a 4y. The opposite of 4y is negative 4y. So to get a negative 4y here, I would have to multiply this top equation by negative 2. Distribute, distribute, distribute. So I have negative 10x minus 4y equals negative 14. Recopy the bottom equation. That didn't change at all. So when I go to do this, now I have my opposites, all right? I have my opposites of negative 4 and positive 4y. So now I can just add going down, just like you did yesterday. Negative 10 plus 1 is negative 9x. These just canceled out, equals negative 9. Divide by negative 9, divide by negative 9, solving this equation. And you get x equals 1. Subbing that back in, all right? I now have my choice. I can take this 1 and I can sub it in for x or for x. I think that bottom equation is a little bit easier to sub into. So I'm going to take this 1 and sub it into that bottom equation where I had 1x plus 4y equals 5. I'm going to take that 1 and sub it in for x. 1 times 1 is 1, so I have 1 plus 4y equals 5. Minus 1, solving that two-step equation. So 4y equals 4. Divide by 4, divide by 4, you get y equals 1. Notice that I got x equals 1 and y equals 1. That is the same answer that I got here of x equals 1 and y equals 1. So it's the same problem solved two different ways. I made opposites with my x's in this first example. I made opposites with my y's in my second example. So again, you have your choice in how you want to solve these. Now let's take a look at this one. All right, when we take a look at this one, I see that 2 does not go into 9 evenly, and I see that 2 doesn't go into 3 evenly. So you do have your choice at the beginning of whether you want to make opposites with your x's or your y's. I like using, if you don't have anything that goes in evenly, I like to use the smallest possible numbers. So if I multiply together 2 times 9, that gives me 18. So I'd have to create 18 and negative 18. But if I use my y's, I have 2 times 3. 2 times 3 is 6. Sixes are a lot easier to make opposites with compared to 18s. You're just going to be working with smaller numbers. Smaller numbers are easier to work with. So I'm going to make opposites with my y's. 2 times 3 is 6. So I want to create a positive 6y and a negative 6y. To make a negative 6y here, I'd have to multiply by 3. Distribute, distribute, distribute. To make a positive 6 here, I'd have to multiply by 2. Distribute, distribute, distribute. So when I go to distribute across the top, I would have 27x minus 6y equals negative 63. Make sure you distribute all 3 times. For the bottom one, I would have 4x plus 6y equals 32. So now I'm going to solve this equation. All right, I have my opposites now. All right, notice that I have my opposites. I have a positive 6 and a negative 6. So all that I need to do is add going down, because now these will cancel out. So when we go to add going down, 27 plus 4 is 31x. These canceled out, equals negative 63 plus 32 is negative 31. Solve this equation. So divide by 31, divide by 31. You get x equals negative 1. So that's one of my answers. Now I need to take that negative 1 and I need to sub it in for either x or x. I like this bottom equation a little bit better. You do have your choice. I like this bottom equation better because it doesn't have the minus sign and it doesn't have negatives. I'd rather work with positive numbers and plus signs compared to negative numbers and minus signs. So I'm going to take and sub that in to the bottom equation. All right, that's a 6. So I'm going to take that negative 1 and sub it in. So I'm going to have 2 times negative 1 plus 3y equals 16. So 2 times negative 1 is negative 2 plus 3y equals 16 plus 2 plus 2. So 3y equals 18. Divide by 3, divide by 3, y equals 6. So I got negative 1 and positive 6. If you went to go do your checks, you could sub them in. All right, 9 times negative 1. 9 times negative 1 is negative 9 minus 2 times 6. So negative 9 minus 12 does give you negative 21, which is what we got. So that first one checks. If we sub it into the second one, we'd have 2 times negative 1 plus 3 times 6 equals 16. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2 plus 18 does give us 16. So 16 equals 16. It checks. Both of them check. So we know that our answers are correct. Let's take a look at number 1 on the homework tonight. All right, number 1 on the homework tonight looks like this. Let me get you started on this. 4 does not go into 7 evenly. 2 does not go into negative 3 evenly. So this is not one of those ones where you just have to multiply one of them. This is actually one of them that you have to multiply both equations. So if I go to multiply 4 times 7, 4 times 7 is 28. If I go to multiply 2 times 3, that's 6. I'd rather work with 6s compared to 28s. So if I go to make a positive 6 up here, I'd have to multiply by 3. If I go to make a negative 6 here, I'd have to multiply by 2. Distribute, 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 distribute. Make sure you distribute to all 3 things. So you would have 3 times 7x, which is 21x. 3 times 2y, which is 6y. 3 times 9, which is 27 for that upper equation. For the bottom equation, 2 times 4x is 8x. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6y. 2 times negative 28 is negative 56. 6. Notice that when I did that, I now have my opposites right here. So the next step is just to add going down, and those y's will cancel out. So again, you want to make opposites with your x's or your y's. Sometimes, like in this first equation, you have to just multiply one set if a number goes into another number evenly. Remember, you want to make opposites though. Another common mistake is people making the same number by accidentally multiplying like this top equation by 2, and then you get 4y and 4y. Remember, you don't want sames, you want opposites. So like 4 and negative 4. So be very careful. Also remember, again, distribute all 3 times. That's the biggest mistake that people make.